I'm Cathy Mager and I'm a curator and a producer and an artist. The history of deafness in my family goes back to the 1700s. This means I'm the 7th generation. The arts have a very key role to play in empowering deaf people. Last year, Alice and I collaborated on a short film projection, and we called it Unfurl. It was a sort of metaphor for a person who is deaf, who's going through life and facing many challenges and obstacles and having to navigate them and to figure out who they are and where they're going to be. Alice and I are keen to explore biodiversity, emergencies and climate change and how that's impacting on everybody around the world. It's important to recognise that deaf people have a role and a need to be part of the discussions around climate change. Sign language has the ability to express really complex, multi-layered, scientific, visual representations of nature which are much harder to depict in written form. Because of COVID, the audience was limited to 50, but that was actually quite nice because it created quite an intimate and in-depth experience, and for the deaf people watching, and I was able to have this really fantastic conversation. This year and next year, we're working in collaboration with Alice again, and we're going to expand the team of people we're working with, so we're hoping to collaborate with 2 deaf dancers. We're going to be coming together in China, workshopping, experimenting, improvising, collaboration between dance, sign language, projection and biodiversity, which is a really fascinating mix to explore. The main thing we're trying to achieve is greater recognition of deaf talents and the brilliant deaf skills that there are in China, the performers, the filmmakers, the photographers, all of the people who are part of this project. I'm very lucky to come from a long ancestry of deaf people. I'm the 7th generation and my deaf son is the 8th generation. Each generation has experienced different barriers as the world slowly adapts and becomes more inclusive. But some fundamental barriers are still there. And one of the main barriers to inclusion is the perception of deaf people as being less intelligent. And that's why it's so important through the arts, through filmmaking, to produce content which promotes how deaf people participate in many different things and many different walks in life. Empowering deaf people through the creation of public art is really key in the role to change that negative perception, and also to develop an understanding that sign language is a language in its own right. Sign language is not something to be afraid of. It's a language that is worthy of respect and admiration. This is what I try to do through all of my work, wherever I can, including deaf people and their stories. Obviously, sign language is not unique to the deaf community. There are people who use sign language within their native culture. So sign language is something that has been around for thousands of years as part of human way of communicating. Some countries do have official recognition of the language, so that means that deaf people can be more assertive and more able to access services and support for deaf children as well. I was invited by the British Council to take part in the UK-China Creative Connections event, and that involved an event within Museum Beijing and also a live broadcast to, I think it was about 200,000 people. There was a really lovely moment when a deaf person in the audience asked me if I could teach them the BSL alphabet. And it ended up the whole room began using BSL, and it was such a magical moment because I didn't expect that. I didn't expect to have such engagement with the people who were there so far away, and I'll always remember that. Everyone was so warm and interested in the project. It's amazing to me that there are 20 million people who are deaf in China, and in terms of how those deaf people can be empowered and given more opportunities in the future, I think that comes down to supporting these emerging and very brilliant young deaf people who are actively there being innovative and creative. If museums and galleries and public spaces around China offer a stage or welcome those deaf people within those spaces, bit by bit that message will spread.